Remember, your data is your money, but your process is your profitability. Today on our Office PLM YouTube channel, we will be discussing the dreaded ECO. So, how do you process your ECO? What do you want from your ECO? Is your ECO fast and efficient? Or does your ECO create problems and cost you money? These are all questions that our customers have had over the years and they're dealing with it. They struggle with it. So is your ECO, is it folder based? I've been in companies where they say, who has the blue folder? They're looking for the paper folder that has all of the information in it and they don't know whose desk it's on. Is it email based? You could be sitting next to someone, but you have to email them because you have to push all the data through an email. Or is it your document control group? Do they actually manage the ECO? Or is it your configuration management group? Do they manage the ECO? You may not even have those groups. I've worked where all of these are in play, and I've never really seen a really good system that does it all. So all of the things that we mentioned just manage the process to a degree. But what about the BOM data? What about the CAD data? The revisions, the status, and the new BOM structure that's going to be released? Most ECO processes do nothing for the user that does the real work in managing the documents. This is where it all falls apart for most companies. Someone creates the ECR or the ECO. The engineers have to do the work while someone has to keep the record straight, meaning the part data, the revision, the status, the document data, the revision, and the status. And who creates the new BOM and replaces the old rev with the new one? And do you replace it one level up? Or do you go all the way to the finished good item? So if some component that's used in 100 assemblies and it's revved, what do you do? I've seen software that help on the process side that make pretty workflows and try to convince you it's a big help, but it's really not because it doesn't manage the whole data schema. And it still requires someone to backfill the information, usually after the fact. So this is where the CAD data, the BOM, and the drawing part ways, never to be seen together again. The CAD vault owns the design, the ERP system owns the BOM, and the only truth is in the PDF drawing. So how does Office PLM fix all these issues? Let's start. So what you can see here is what I mentioned earlier is a pretty workflow diagram. And yes, we have that. But more than that, this automated workflow actually does the work of managing the document status, the document revision, and replacing that revision where it's used. So let's begin. I'm going to look for a part that someone wants it changed from red to blue, and we'll just say that's our change. So I'm going to look for a red part, and here we have one. And we can see, if we look at the right click and use the browser view, we can see where this part is used in context. And that's what's called the browser view. It's what every PLM system has. So here we see the part, and if we right click expand all, we can see how it's used in context. So we have a part, it's on Rev A, it's released, and it's true that it's the latest revision, meaning that there is no Rev B out there. So we want to take one of these components and make it blue. So the first thing I would do is start and create a new ECO. Click on the icon, give it a description, change this red to blue. And it's a, we'll say it's an engineering change. And the change reason is a product change. And we could also put in the customer if we want. So now we have this ECO. It has a description. And what we want to do is we want to submit this workflow or this ECO to a workflow. The workflow is actually the tool that will actually do all the work for us. You can have as many workflows as you need. In this case, when we looked at that workflow earlier, that's a good example of how a company starts the process and it weaves its way through all the departments throughout the company. But for today's demo, I'm going to do an automated workflow that actually does this for us in a much faster time, so we don't have to sit and click through all this. So I'm going to submit it to this what we call the auto rev test, and just say okay. So now I can see that this workflow is in a new status. It's been submitted. And if I want to look at this, I would just simply go to my tasks icon and click it. And I can see that here it is, it's sitting here. And I can also view it, right clicking and viewing it, and it's going to show me the graphical view of what has to happen. So this workflow wants us to add the affected parts, check to make sure it's released and unlocked. Then all these green icons is what the system is going to do for us. It's going to auto state change. It's going to auto revise the parts and documents. It's going to do an auto state change to review, an auto state change to release or superseded, depending on what part it is. Then we go into CAD and do the engineering change. And lastly, it will export to ERP. So we can keep this little window up and in the background just so we can watch its progress. So here's my task. I'm going to turn on the auto refresh so it'll refresh for me automatically. And the first thing I'm going to do is claim it, because I'm in a group of several people that are actually authorized to do this work. So claiming it, it's saying add the affected items. So what I want to do is I want to open this ECO browser. And opening the browser just allows me to have a dialog box that I can drop the affected items onto this container, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and pick on this M97 bomb part. I'm going to add it as an affected item. The change reason, we said it was engineering, and it's a high priority. I'm also going to add the CAD component as an affected item. Again, the same reason, engineering, high priority. So now we've added two components to our engineering change. At this point, it's a request because we haven't saved it. You can see the folders are blue. There is a red icon here saying that, you're about to do this. Well, this is where we would mock it up and see if the request is exactly what we want. Does this request match what we think we're asking for? So we're going to review that. It looks good. So now we save it. Once we save it, then we have committed these affected items to the ECO. And you can see here that these icons represent the part in the document. The part is the BOM component. The document is the CAD document. All right. So now if we look at this, we can say that we're going to claim that task, which we did, and we can say that we have completed it. And we could add comments here and details. We go back and look at our workflow, we can visually see that the automated workflow has actually completed all of the automated steps for us. Now, in a lot of ECO management tools, we're just managing this workflow. It's not doing anything behind the scenes, meaning it's not changing my Rev A and creating a new Rev B of the BOM component. It's not making a Rev B of the CAD component. And it's certainly not replacing it where it should be replaced. So let's look at let's refresh this screen here, this ECO screen. And while we're waiting for it to do all the scripting that it's required, because what it's doing is it's not only is it creating the new revisions, but it's managing the state of the old, what we would call now the superseded revisions. A has been superseded. B is now released. What we were talking about earlier about where it all falls apart, this is where it falls apart in every company because they don't have a system like this that actually created the Rev B, created the Rev B. Again, created the Rev B, created the Rev B. So now we have a system that created all the Rev B, superseded the Rev A's. This is where companies get into trouble all the time. This is where all the mistakes begin to happen. But you can see here that now this Rev A, while it's still released and it still may be in effect, it is not the latest released. That's false there. And you can see Rev A was superseded. And we can see if we look at our structure down here, if we do a refresh on this structure, we would hope to see the same data scenario where the top level now, while it's still released, it's false. It's not the latest Rev. And if we expand this and we go down here and look at the part that we picked on, it's now superseded. It's telling me, yeah, this assembly still is released, but it's not the latest released. And you have some components inside this assembly that have been superseded. If we look at this and we say, show me all of the revisions, list all the revisions, I'm going to see the new Rev B. My automated workflow down here created Rev B. And let's look at Rev B in the browser. So we should expect to see that Rev B is released, and it's true, meaning that it is the latest release of assembly, which is in fact noted here with the true condition. And if we go down here and look at the M component that we picked on, we can see, yes, that they are released in Rev B. So what did we just do? This automated workflow, not only did it manage the whole process with a really nice graphical interface, but it did the work that we were talking about earlier that someone has to do. Is it engineering? Is it configuration management? Is it document management? Who is that person? Typically, it ends up being the engineer. And not always do they like to do all this administrative paperwork. We're doing it for you. We are creating the Rev Bs. We are superseding the Rev As. And we are replacing the revision where it needs to be, whether it's one level up or all the way to the finished good item. That's extremely powerful. This is where almost every company falls down and fails. This is where every company, if they look back in time and look back in their history, their CAD is not in agreement with the bill of material. And that's why the drawing, the PDF of the drawing, is the final truth. And none of them are in lock rev step with each other. In this example, it will always be the case that they're in lock rev step because we're managing all of this. So let's go ahead and take Rev B, this assembly, and let's add it to our favorites. Just so if we wanted to bring it up real quick, it would be easy to find it. And let's do Rev A as well. So in our favorites tab now, we have Rev A and Rev B of the same document. The Rev A is not the latest, it's false, but the Rev B is the latest, which is true. They're both released. Now you could change that. You could have it automated where Rev B becomes superseded, but in a lot of companies, Rev A is still a released item. So now let's go into the next step, which is it's saying, hey, you need to do the engineering work. Okay. So it's saying do the engineering changes. All right, so let's go to SolidWorks. And let's open the CAD data. So how would we do that? What are we looking for? Do we even know what we're looking for? Well, if we click on our favorites tab, we can see, well, here are the two CAD things that we were talking about. Or we could do a traditional part search and, we could search for this thing with the color, the red. and we could find it that way, or we could search for the document, or we could search by the ECO. Let's put in the ECO number, and let's just be exact. We're going to search for the ECO that we were working on, and it said, okay, these were the three things. We had 3 Rev A's that went to Rev B. Right there. There's no confusion on what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the assembly Rev B. Open it up, check it out. And here we have it. And in this case, we could have, modified the information. What the ECO was telling us to do was to change some information. So right from the CAD client, we could modify that information, and we could change this red to blue, save it. And at this point, and I know that's a very simple example of the CAD data, but usually it'd be something involved with geometric tolerances or drawings or dimensions or something like that. But in this case, it was a very quick example. So once I've done that, then I would check it in back into the system, having done my work. And you can see the system doing that. And here we go. We're going to say, okay, check it back in, save our changes. So in this case, the engineering is finished, and it's telling us, it's giving us a couple of dialog windows saying that these are the parts that you were acting on, not only the documents, but here are the parts. So knowing that I've done that, I can say, okay, I can finish the engineering changes. And then once that happens, then you can have an export node in the workflow that actually will push this to your ERP system, sync it to your ERP system. And now I can look and see this entire workflow is complete, and I'm done. So let's summarize here. This is what no other PLM system that I know does. Now, there are some tier 1 systems that are toolboxes, and you can customize them to do everything. This is out of the box. There's no consulting, there's no additional fee, there's no months and months to get this working. This comes out of the box with a workflow that you can configure, and configure is not consulting. It's just, I want to use my names, I want to use my flow, I want to go from here to here, and you can have it out of the box. Creating the Rev A and Rev B is incredible. It is so powerful because it takes out all of the problems that companies have. You can see this Rev A was superseded and a new Rev B was created in its place. This Rev A was superseded and Rev B was created in its place. That's exactly what we wanted to happen down here on this component, this M component. Superseded. Not only does this do the hard work of keeping creating these new revisions and keeping them in sync, but it replaces Rev A with the Rev B that you wanted, and you can configure it to replace it at one level or as far up as you want. In this case, we went to the top level, finished good item. Not only is this incredibly powerful, but it's so useful in helping companies to stop making those mistakes, those administrative mistakes that exist in their drawings, their bombs, in their part structure. I can't tell you how many customers I know that have dirty data, and this is usually the culprit. So this is worth, could you say it's worth a whole department? Yeah, maybe. Is it worth at least a single person? Yeah. Is it worth engineering not having to manage this and make sure that it's right? Yeah, you can find ROI all over the place with this tool. So that concludes our look at the Auto ECO.